71 years ago, on June 25th of 1950, a tragic war of brothers broke out here on the Korean peninsula. Korea was divided into North and South, ruled by different ideologies. The war began when the North attempted to absorb South Korea through force with an illegal invasion. The Korean War lasted for over 3 years. Until July 27, 1953, when an armistice was made, countless battles and casualties took place on the peninsula. Today on Cinestory, we'll journey through these tragic times through film. The movie Taegukgi Brotherhood of War puts in motion the most contentious period of the Korean War.
형, 아무 얘기 못 들었어? 전쟁은 어때?
오늘 25일 미명 38선 전역에 북한 캐나도당이 불법 남침하였습니다.
At around 4 a.m. on June 25, 1950, North Korean troops launched the first attack on South Korea, closing in with tanks. Back then, North Korea had superior army forces, and the ill-equipped army in the South was pushed into a corner. The United Nations immediately summoned a Security Council meeting and adopted a resolution that stated the United Nations would provide every support necessary to repel the North Korean invasion. But in the meantime, the capital city of Seoul was taken by North Korean army in a matter of just 3 days. The South Korean army had to pull together whatever resources it had. And so many young people were drafted into the war.
만 18세에서 30세까지 남자들은 앞으로 좀 나와 주십시오.
In the movie, the two brothers were deployed to the very last stronghold of the Southern UN forces, the Nakdongang River defense line.
여기가 밀리면 부산, 부산이 밀리면 해운대 앞바다에 빠져 죽는 길 뿐이다. 후퇴는 없다.
With South Korean forces to the east of Waegan in Gyeongsang-pukto province and UN forces to the south, they were desperately trying to block the flood of offensives coming from the north. But one day, good news came to the south.
사람과 동시에 기쁜 소식 하나를 더 전하겠다. 오늘 새벽 미 해병대가 인천 상륙에 성공했다는 소식이다.
A historic arrival that made the scenes of a 2016 movie called Operation Chromite. At the time, the UN Army's Commander-in-Chief, General Douglas MacArthur, found a critical weakness in the North's strategy when all North Korean troops were concentrated at the Nakdongang River line.
On September 15th, 0000 hours, guide our fleet to the beach.
September 15, 1950, 261 ships carrying some 70,000 troops advanced into waters off South Korea's west coast. Catching North Koreans by surprise, the Incheon landings cut off the North supply lines. The successful and amphibious landing in Incheon completely reversed the situation. On September 28th, Seoul was restored to the south, and as the forces marched north, it appeared that the war was coming to an end. Or it seemed at the time. The intervention of the Chinese Communist forces once again flipped the situation. On January 4, 1951, Seoul was recaptured by the North, and UN troops were forced to retreat below the Hangang River. The Army of South Korea and UN reorganized their battle lines and reclaimed Seoul on March 15th. From that point, it was a constant tug-of-war until it became stuck in limbo. Then on July 10, 1951, armistice talks finally began. But the negotiations stalled. And so, the scramble for the front hills continued to prolong the war. Along the 38th parallel, fighting resumed to capture even the most narrow strips of land.
에로K. 여기선 통칭 에로꼬지라고 합니다. 에로꼬지는 반경 2.5km로 7시간 전만 해도 제들 거였는데 5번 공격 실패하고 6번 만에 겨우 뺐었습니다.
The Front Line is a movie about the constant battles on the front hills during the armistice negotiations that lasted for 2 years. The movie is based on the actual battles on the front hills, such as Battle of White Horse Hills and Battle of Samichon River. It explicitly shows the horrendous scenes of wars.
싸우는 이유가 뭔데? 너무 오래돼서 잊어버려서.
And finally, on July 27, 1953, 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days after the outbreak of war, the Armistice Agreement was signed. Yet the Korean War did not come to a full stop, but had been in a state of coma for decades. Perhaps someday, a compelling film about a unified peninsula will hit our screens.